The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
And welcome to the January 11th edition of For the Record. And on today's show, it's the Opinionators. I am Larry Deanny, the host of the program, and here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about deep cuts. Are they coming to Queen's Park? And what is with the new deal on health care at the federal level? And also, there is a spate of Tory appointments in the Senate. Well, why not? All that and the lightning round as well. And of course, we're joined by our panel of experts representing each of the parties, and we're going to go with a different color, it seems. Is this foreshadowing anything? Alex Johnstone, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Larry. My wardrobe defected to the Liberals today.
It did, and we'll talk about defections shortly. And Ron Corsini, you're wearing earth tones. Welcome to the show.
Great, nice to be here.
And of course, Tara Cunyale, our community producer for this program as well. Tara, welcome to you.
Thanks, Larry.
Well, let's get right to it, panel, because we know that we're into some austerity programs, and we have discovered that quietly the provincial government, we'll start with you, Ron, has cut about $42 million from research funding grants to universities. Well, how do you explain that, Mr. Corsini?
Well, listen, as we all know, we are going through some very difficult economic times here and in the world. So we, being a very responsible government, are having to look at some cuts. Although, let me add that we are spending more than what the previous Harris government did, who made all the cuts in the first place. So we are spending more on research and development than they ever did. So I don't see this as being such a big deal. We are still spending over $200 million on research. So people are panicking over nothing. We're just being a little more careful about where our money goes.
Well, Tara, I seem to remember that you have an affinity for the Conservative Party, and he mentioned the Harris government. Are we still talking about that level?
You know, desperate times call for desperate measures, I guess, in the Liberal Party if they're still harking back to 1995. Truly, this government can only blame themselves for the hole that they've dug ourselves, all of us, in for the past 8 years. We can see that the gravy train is over. Deep cuts, some as high as 30%, are going to have to be made in different programs. Dalton McGuinty is trying to assure us that these cuts will not come in healthcare, in education, in social services. Well, then where are you going to find the savings? I think that we have to be clear that we all have to tighten our belts. There will be cuts across the board, and you know, then we're going to have to see where the cards are going to fall, because we're all going to have to take a part in this. The Liberals have spent way too much money over the past few years.
Now, Alex, it seems to me that your party, your leader specifically, did make some suggestions as to how the budget might be balanced at the provincial level. How do you feel about these impending cuts that we're being told might be coming? And not just to tuitions, or at least to research, by the way, generally speaking.
Well, to speak specifically to the research grants, this is a case of, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul. These cuts to the research grants were made specifically so that Dalton McGuinty can honor his promise to students in order to reduce tuition rates. I think, though, that it's really sad to see these cuts. They were geared at actually making jobs here in Ontario. A lot of the research was around the environment and creating renewable energy, things that we need to be investing in as a society. I think, though, you know, I'm hearing the lines, the Liberal Conservative lines that, you know, tough times call for tough measures. Well, and if that's the case, then we all need to be tightening our belts. And certainly, I don't think that we can afford these hefty corporate tax cut giveaways, which is exactly what Andrea Horwath is talking about. In addition, the NDP feels, you know, very unhappy about the fact that there was no pre-budget meetings scheduled between Dalton McGuinty in the official opposition. McGuinty was given a mandate by the province in the last election, when he only won a minority government, to work with the other parties, and that's not happening. So because of that, Andrea Horwath will be touring the province and getting input from Ontarians about their priorities, what they want to see in the budget, because it shouldn't be McGuinty sitting the budget, it should be Ontarians.
But you know, it is going to be McGuinty, because no other party is ready for an election. We've gone through this before. We'll go through it again every week. Give me 1 second, Ron.
But he's not.
I think one of the, I think that in Hamilton specifically, we'll be seeing the trickle-down effect of these cost-cutting measures. I mean, every year we're used to getting special transfer payments from the province for our special social service needs. Yeah. Are we going to continue to see those, or is Dalton McGuinty kind of, you know, setting the theme for what's going to be happening over the next few years, which will be less money for cities to help them with these transfer payments? You know, less money for just about everything. Are people in the public service going to be losing their jobs? How many people in Hamilton are employed by the province? It's incredible, and I think that we're really going to feel those cuts.
Although he did say that he vowed that cuts to health and education would not happen.
Yeah, he also vowed he'd never raise taxes. And how many times has he done that in the past?
But you know what? There are a lot of areas where some cuts
his word is not secure. And again, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So, you know, he didn't run on a campaign in the fall that he was going to cut grants. Had that been the case, I'm sure there's many people out there who wouldn't have voted for him. So it's about honesty at this point. I think, though, that another important part here is that I am interested in seeing the Drummond report, and that it's not just about making cuts to our programs, but also looking at how to, you know, get a bigger bang for them. One of the things that Drummond
Well, listen,
said,
no, I'm going to have to interrupt, otherwise we won't have time to get to the other topics.
Okay.
But Andrea, or Alex, rather, I promise you, I've called you Andrea again.
It's a compliment.
Foreshadows good things for you. But I promise you that when the Drummond report comes out, I'm sure we'll be talking about it, and you'll have the first go at that. All right,
Absolutely.
Alex? But let's move on to the federal level, because, of course, as we know, historically, the federal government sits down with all the premiers and they talk about funding for health care. In a novel move, the finance minister simply said, this is what you're getting, take it or leave it. What do you make of that? Is that leadership, and we'll start with you, Tara, or is that chutzpah?
Well, I mean, as we all know, healthcare costs a tremendous amount of money. So much of our GDP goes towards the care of the people of Canada. In Ontario specifically, I believe it's over 55% of our tax dollars go towards healthcare. Each province is different, and we can even see just in the way that some prescription medications or operations are covered in one province and not another, or depending on the amount of time that you've lived in a province will determine if you can or cannot get healthcare in that province. So truly, when we talk about the Canada Health Act and that everyone is equal in the eyes of the government when it comes to healthcare, that's never been the truth. And so I feel like we're just continuing down the same path. We're going to try to do our best in Ontario to help as many people as possible with as many different prescriptions and operations as possible. But there's a finite amount of money that each province gets. I think that the government, the federal government, is going in the right direction, because each province has to determine what new things that they're going to be trying to do for healthcare.
And Ron?
Well, obviously, I think they're going to have to look outside the box, because the transfer payments are with the policy, no strings attached. Meaning, what does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to see, or we're going to be forced to see, more private clinics opening up, and maybe for those that can't afford to, will be able to go to a private clinic? And you see the way healthcare is being delivered now. We have walk-in clinics and things of that nature to help free us. We have an aging population, not only in Ontario, but throughout all the provinces. And maybe we should be running our own system, meaning that not depending on the federal government for transfer payments to the provinces. We have and have not provinces, and the have not provinces obviously should receive more of that funding. And by population, Ontario being the more populated province in Canada should obviously receive more. And we are looking at ways of delivering health care that needs to be delivered. And like I said before, with our aging population, we may have to look outside the box. Just now, wait times in getting into retirement homes and long-term care facilities are long time wait. And it's very difficult for families that are waiting for their loved ones to be put in some sort of institution because they can no longer care for them at home. Although our government has been proposing with tax credits to keep your loved ones at home. I would prefer to be at home than in a long-term care facility anyway.
All right, so those are lots of topics. Alex, how about you? Is the new approach by the feds, does that spell the end of universal health care?
I hope not. I hope that they don't have. I hope that they don't demolish what has been a Canadian tradition and something that Canadians highly value for many, many years. There's a reason why Tommy Douglas won the most famous Canadian person, and or was acclaimed that, and the reason being was because of he initiated healthcare. I think, though, that I have to repeat many of the comments that that Ron has brought up. The Conservatives are wiping their hands of this issue. They're not taking responsibility. Under the Constitution, it is up to the federal government to ensure quality healthcare services across Canada, no matter where you are. And by removing any kinds of strings, ensuring that certain money is pocketed towards certain healthcare services, then all of a sudden you're going to have grave disparities across Canada in terms of the types of services that people are receiving. I think that we're going to see higher wait times. We're going to see services start to decline, and this is because of government inaction at the federal level. Most concerning is that you end up having individuals who get hurt. Individuals like Ken Rogers, who here in Hamilton, there was a protest last Friday. I actually attended it, where all of Ken's family and friends came out to City Hall, and they're protesting because Ken cannot afford his life-saving brain medicine for his brain cancer, which is costing him over $6,000 every few weeks. That's not right, that people like Ken, who can't afford that prescription, are forced to consider bankruptcy or death.
But Alex, it's only because he lives in the wrong province, in another province already. Before Stephen Harper washed his hands of this situation, we still had this situation. And it's terrible to think, and knock on wood, none of us want to be in that situation. But it's going to happen time and time again across Canada because we never really have had equality across the board.
That's right, Tara.
At the same time, though, Alex, really, if you look at it, we talk about wait times. When we have to wait 13, 14 hours in an emergency room, we don't blame Stephen Harper. We blame Dalton McGuinty, because our provincial government is the one that's actually coordinating the efforts for health care.
I'm sorry,
so we're still going to have a government responsible for what's going on. He
came in with a huge amount of surplus money that the Liberals had saved for rainy days, such as now. Today is a rainy day because we have a population.
I'm sorry,
that
what are you
is
talking about? From
beginning to
you're
age.
talking about a few years ago again?
Well, that was when Harper came in. Harper chose to
dust
splurge
off
the
the
money
history
through
books.
giving corporate tax getaways.
Different times, Alex. We're dealing with a very different Canada today. And
it is. We have an aging population.
Unfortunately, no province is going to be able. Okay, this is one thing I think we can all agree on. No province could possibly offer every single prescription medication that every person in their province wants, or every operation. That would bankrupt the province. Unfortunately, some people are going to be left out in the cold.
But you know what? There has to be exceptions made in something like for this one particular person. I mean, it's not
we're human, Ron. We want to help everyone, and I really hope that this person gets the help they need.
Yeah, that's the point. Where do you draw the line? But I'm going to draw the line because we've got another topic to cover before our lightning round. And this topic has to do, and we'll start with you, Alex, because I know how supportive your party is of the Senate. The Prime Minister just announced, I believe, $7 new senators, conservative senators, to join the upper chamber. How do you feel about that?
Well, Larry, my wardrobe changed, but my values didn't. We don't support the Senate. It's an unelected body, and it certainly holds up progress in terms of getting policies and getting bills through. I think that we have to look at who these appointments went to. Majority of appointments were given to failed conservative candidates who ran an election and couldn't get elected, and yet they feel that they're worthy enough to put them in Senate. Canadians didn't want them in the first place, and didn't trust them to represent their values in the House of Commons. So I don't see why we would consider them worthy of the Senate. The other individuals who were appointed were longtime donors to the Conservative Party. So there's a lot of rewarding going on, and it isn't just in the Senate, but there's also been a number of appointments from Canada, appointing Conservatives to the UN, to the Montreal Port Authority, lucrative positions. And at the end of the day, we need to stop that kind of behavior. That's why Canadians don't trust politicians, and we have a reputation as being slimy.
Well, we'll go to Ron, because Ron, the NDP doesn't support the Chamber of Sober Second Thought. Your party supports sobriety, don't you?
Yes, but it is broken. The Senate is broken. And I still believe if the NDP, God forbid, were in power federally, they would appoint some of their people too. I thought when Harper was running early on, and when he first ran for Prime Minister, that he would have the testicular courage to fix the Senate.
Listen to you.
And he has not. And it keeps on going on and on and on, where eventually he'll fill the whole upper chamber with former Tories.
Just like parties did before ours was in power. Alex, I feel like your words are very harsh against the people that have been elected to the Senate. It isn't our fault.
Elected.
Not elected.
If we find people that are appointed, if we find people with the credentials necessary and they happen to be in our own party, then I don't see any reason why they should not be elected to the Senate.
So what happened? Why did
Alex, the only
get
reason that the NDP are always calling sour grapes is because they know that they'll never, ever get into the Senate the way that it's designed today.
No, this is
that's the long and short of it.
Well, actually, two of the appointees, one just recently,
as a Liberal,
woman from Alberta, was actually elected by the province of Alberta to the Senate. So not a direct election because it doesn't. We don't have that process. But in Alberta, they do.
No, but Larry, you know that in the Reform Party, when they were running full steam ahead in Canada, they were all about Senate reform.
Right.
They wanted the elected Senate. That isn't something. That's something that has somewhat followed into the new Conservative Party. But as you see, it's not something that we're up to doing yet. You don't know if you really want an elected Senate. Do we want it to be bipartisan?
Who says
of course
we don't want an elected Senate?
The Liberals.
And that's
Who
a
says
whole.
that?
The
I just wanna
Liberals,
know,
your party, Ron.
what caused
no,
Harper
I
Does
don't
your
think
party
so.
want an elected Senate?
Listen, that's a whole other discussion, and it would take us a long time. We're actually eating into our lightning round time now. And panel, last week we had the bell. The bell's gone missing. So on
Alex
my monitor,
hit it.
on my monitor, I will be the bell, because on my monitor there will be a time, and each of you will get 20 seconds to 30 seconds to state your opinions. And I've got a number of topics, so let's go to that right now. And the first one, and we'll start with you, Alex, because it was about a defection from the NDP in Quebec. A woman by the name of Lise Saint-Denis decided and announced just a couple of days ago that she'd had enough of the NDP, and she was going to join the Liberal Party in caucus, much to the happiness of the Liberals and consternation of people in your party. You got 30 seconds to give us a reaction.
Well, it's interesting. Lise did defect from the NDP over to the Liberals. However, that is not the way of the constituents. According to the Montreal Gazette this morning, her constituents are outraged and they're calling for a by-election. I think the only thing that Lise secured was she'll be a future trivia question on politics. That's her future.
All right, and with 5 seconds to spare, Ron, let's see if you can match that.
Okay, all the NDP in Quebec were voted because of Jack Layton. Jack Layton, unfortunately, has passed on. And she said this. I mean, there were MPs elected that didn't even campaign in the election, that weren't even in the... so what does that tell you? That tells you that people voted for Jack Layton, and Jack Layton is no more. And I feel bad for the next leader because I don't know whether that leader is going to be able to maintain those seats in Quebec.
Okay, and with 1 second to spare, Tara, see how you can do.
You know, she's jumping from one sinking ship to another, so it doesn't matter much to a conservative like myself. One thing I do want to say is that I just hate it when anyone jumps from one party to another. I don't think that it's right in the least. You were elected as a member of a certain party, and if you're going to leave that party, you should stick out your seat as an independent.
All right, very good. And the second lightning round question has to do, actually, with Jack Layton's old riding. And we'll start with you, Ron, because they selected a law professor, Craig
Scott.
Craig Scott, a law professor, to run in the by-election whenever it's called. But the Liberals have also said that they're targeting that party to take it back. Ron, how do you feel about, first of all, Mr. Scott, and the Liberals' chances?
Well, I don't know Mr. Scott, and I think that it's wide open now that, and I said this before, that now that Jack Layton's gone, does this man have the same charisma, the same connection with the people of that riding? I don't know, because I only heard him speak for a very short time on his acceptance speech. So the Liberals are going to go in there, and I hope that they get that riding back, and they can.
And Tara, how do you feel about that? The Conservatives find Toronto tough, although they did make some inroads federally last time. But
yeah, I don't see
Scott,
us really making an inroad into this riding. Although before Jack Layton, it was Liberal held, and I believe that it can be theirs to win again. Mr. Scott can be well regarded as a law professor in his own circles, academic circles, or in NDP circles, but who knows him outside of that? And I think that the Liberals will find a star candidate to try to beat him.
I would have thought, Alex, that young Mike Layton might have been tapped on the shoulder. He wasn't. He's a municipal politician in Toronto, a popular one, I'm told. But they chose a person of substance. I think you'd agree.
Oh, absolutely. Toronto Danforth is held by the NDP federally, provincially, at the municipal level, even straight down to the school board trustee. They would say that they have left-wing leanings. I think that Craig Scott's going to do a phenomenal job. He's a human rights professor, and all the power to him. I think that Toronto Danforth has been giving a wonderful candidate.
All right. Well, we'll see, because part of the question, of course, is when the by-election is called. And I think there's a deadline sometime in February. We'll keep our eye on who the other parties nominate and see how that goes. Here's another topic, and we'll start with you, Tara. And it has to do with, perhaps it's a more lighthearted topic, but sometimes great diplomacy begins with these simple gestures. And apparently there's a hockey game that's going to be played between Canada and the USSR. And Mr. Harper, Prime Minister Harper, who is a hockey historian, I don't know whether he's a player, might be playing in that game. And on the other side, he'll be facing off against Prime Minister Putin, who might become President Putin in the not-too-distant future. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think the PM's office has already nixed the idea of this game, but it's great to play the game of what if. And I can't even begin. I think that this would have been a terrible idea. I hear that Putin plays a little bit of hockey, and if he's scored a few goals, just like he found the Dead Sea Scrolls somewhere last year, and you know, rode a bear or whatever else he does.
And shoots tigers.
And shoots tigers. You know what? You can't pit someone like that against a true democracy like Canada. It would not work.
Ron, come on. You've got faith that the Prime Minister would do
no,
well,
I don't have any faith in the Prime. I just think Harper's a little too stiff to get on hockey sticks, you know, and skate around. No, he just can't do it. I can see putting that away for him. So, no, I don't see. I don't see that happening.
It's not an image that appeals to you. I can tell. Well, Alex, look, I remember when Nixon sent a ping pong team to China, and people thought, well, what kind of an approach is that towards opening up diplomacy with China? And yet it worked. It proved to be a masterful stroke. Couldn't this be setting partisanship aside, a way of dealing with problems with other countries?
If it's authentic and genuine, which I don't think it would be in this case. I think Putin, they said in the paper, has played for the last 5 years, and Harper hasn't played since he was a kid. So I think it would be a pretty sad game to watch. Perhaps Harper should invite Putin to sing with him at the piano.
Oh,
that's a good idea.
Work better.
That would be
well,
better.
but who knows? Putin seems to be able to do so many things well that he might also play the
Well,
piano.
nobody wants to go near him when he's shooting a puck. Of course he's making the goals. Who wants to go to Siberia?
All right, listen, we'll come back to this topic. We've just got just a little bit of time for this, but I sort of jumped the gun. I was talking about provincial cuts in the Drummond Report before, and I introduced the issue of research grant cuts, and I don't know whether, Tara, I gave you the chance to talk about the research grant. You correctly talked about the larger cuts. Do you have anything to say about the research side of it?
Well, I think that it's really silly to ever cut money for research. Because that's the way of the future. That's where we find new ideas, and we can get ahead of the game and perhaps bring jobs back to Canada by having something new to produce. So when you're taking money away from research just so you can play politics and cut some people's tuitions by 30%, and I think that more and more people, as they try to get these tuitions, realize that not everyone is entitled to it. It's just a game of politics gone wrong, I think, for the Liberals.
And Ron, just a quick question for you. The Drummond Report is coming out. The Premier has already said that whatever it says, the government, in working with the opposition, will decide what's cut and what's not, even though some of the report may talk about drastic cuts. Will this government have the guts to make tough cuts if it has to?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. They will have to look at all of the recommendations in the Drummond Report, and it was the government that hired Mr. Drummond for this report, and they will look at everything he has to say, although not necessarily take everything that he does say into law. But I'm sure that, and I'm positive that this present government will work with both parties of the opposition to see these cuts come
And
through.
Alex, we know where your party stands, and you would sooner take money away from corporate giveaways, as you talk about, rather than programs. So we'll leave it at that for today. Let me thank the panel for their opinions. The Opinionators will be back 1 week from today. Please watch Hamilton Talks tomorrow night. Chris Uckland is on. Thank you, panel, and thanks for tuning in.
Tara Crunali's Hair by Ludi Mamoda Hair and Aesthetic Studio, 169 James Street North in downtown Hamilton.